the end to the beginning. I think what's unique about the Sar is that it mostly has to be read from the middle to both ends. So it has two starting points. Surely the very beginning of the introduction to the first part, and I totally disagree with some suggestions that were made in recent years that you can really understand the Star without entering into the first part. But Rosenzweig himself says you cannot, you will not understand the first part unless you have grasped at least enough of the second part, and to my understanding it's really the point of revelation. The basis for revelation and the basis for the, this dual beginning is the notion of miracle that I'll try to tell you how I wish to give commentary on, and I'll be very happy to hear any suggestion and any comment in terms of making things more clearer, and of course if there is also contentious questions in terms of accuracy or other ways of thought, that would be warmly welcome as well. So I think the first thing one should begin, and it's especially important about the second introduction, though I already commented in the morning that I think it's also true for, well, in a way for the entire book, but certainly for all three introductions, is that the introduction has two layers that simultaneously flow through the passages. One is a polemic analysis of a prevailing, in that sense, of prevailing theology, in the same way that the first introduction had polemic analysis of prevailing philosophy. Of course, the difference is that in the first case, in the case of the first part, it was 2,000 or 2,500 years of philosophy as Rosenzweig sees it. In the second part, we are talking about quite a new theology of the 19th and 20th century. And at the same time, he lays a basis for his constructive, that sense, theology, in the same way that he was laying in the very same sentences that, in which he was criticizing idealistic philosophy. He was laying the basis, the groundings for his constructive philosophy. So to my understanding, the best way to navigate through these passages of this introduction is to see both aspects. First the first one, then the second one, and then of course see how they are combined, because at the end of the day he did not differentiate between the two, he combined them. But it might be helpful to see what he is doing. So if we want to, and in the second point, if we wish to see his polemics, and we think again of a beginner reader that is not well grounded in contemporary theology and in 19th, 20th century social and spiritual moves, the first thing would be to clarify the essence of the Leibniz theology, experience theology, beginning with Schleiermacher. Rosenzweig speaks also of Ritschl and others, but I think that Schleiermacher is really the main figure here. And if we look at Schleiermacher, what we can see is that though he is perceived as a reaction to Kant and Enlightenment, this reaction does not bring us back to traditional religiosity, traditional structure of faith, namely of being anchored in the authority of the past, in the authority of all kinds of paths. Path can be, as Rosenzweig himself emphasizes very clearly, the actual church that is based on the event of revelation of Christ. It can be the sequence of studying of Torah in Jewish terms, can be all kinds of forms of past, but traditional religiosity has anchored itself in the well-established authority and well-established evident and clarity of the past, on which we can build our religiosity of the present and certainly our hope for future redemption. Rosenzweig claims, and I think with a lot of basis for it, that what happened with Schleiermacher and what happened from Schleiermacher on in many forms is that religiosity from now on is based on Erlebnis, namely on the presence, experience of the believer, on the kind of experience a believer has in her or his being. From this very experience, which is necessarily intimate and has to do with the individual, it's my experience. You might have the same experience and we might meet on the basis of this experience, but nevertheless it would be my experience and your experience, and only after that a faith community might be built, contrary to the old kind of anchoring in the past that was necessarily something of the community, of the people, of the church, of a larger unit. And on this experience, on this presence experience, one might also base the hopes and commandment towards the future. So it's very much the presence and the future that take place. And what should we do with the past? What should we do with stories, laws, concepts, scripture of the past is from now on an open question rather than the ground on which we stand. Having this in mind, we can understand Rosenzweig's question, and he starts with a very clear historical fact that I think is undeniable, and that is that the notion of miracle, or the place of the belief in miracles, has radically changed in the last 200 years. Whether you count it from now or from Rosenzweig's life, it doesn't really matter. And even for those who stick to the belief in miracles, they believe in miracles because faith demands it, or because they are believers and they are called upon to trust tradition, and they don't believe in tradition because there were miracles. So miracles that used to be a very safe grounding stone or building stone for belief becomes a burden. This is an experience, this is a phenomenon I think we can all understand and we can all appreciate. Rosenzweig's question would be, why did it happen? Now the conventional answer, which Rosenzweig confronts, would be that modernity, enlightenment, modern science has ruined this belief, and because of that we believers have a problem. And he tries to confront this question. Just to give you one example, and I think it might be helpful to give one example, not from the start, about this shift in the place of the past and the miracles, is Rosenzweig's analysis of Protestant liberal theology that replaces the place of Christus of Christ as a revelatory event with the figure of Jesus as a great teacher. And I refer to, of course, to the article Atheistic Theology, in which he criticizes this notion because Jesus, the historical figure, might have been great, but if that is our religiosity, we don't have any revelation. We don't have revelation anymore. We don't have any anchoring any revelatory anchoring in the past, we have great figure that might be relevant, interesting for us. So what Rosenzweig is doing in large parts of this introduction is to go step by step and to show that it was neither modern science nor modern enlightenment in its Auffassung and in its perceptions that really ruined the belief in miracles. It was kind of Tana de Messiah, it was a helpful factor, but no more than that. And I'm not going to enter now into all the details in the detailed commentary. Of course, it will be important to get at least into the headlines of it. I'll just say that Rosenzweig insists that, for example, the notion of of nature as a constant system is not something new. We have, if ancient generations did not have this notion, if they did not have the idea that there is Gesetzlichkeit, there are laws of nature that are normally being followed, nobody would have realized that something extraordinary has happened. In order to understand that, or in order to think that water flowing or stopping to flow and standing like two walls when the people crosses the Red Sea is a miracle, you have to have the notion that normally water does not do it. And that this is against the regular situation, regular natural situation. So this is not new. This is, we have changed our understanding of this Gesetzlichkeit. We have changed our understanding of physics, but not in the sense that now we appreciate a kind of systematic natural behavior, and in previous generation this was not the case. In this direction, the most important element is what Rosenzweig called historical enlightenment and historical theology. And I would like to say a word about both before I continue. The challenge of science to traditional belief is substantial but not that severe. The question whether which kind of cosmology we stick to might nourish some interesting argumentations, and we can hear them till today, but this is not the main challenge. The main challenge is coming for the notion of history, for the notion of the development of myth, the notion of development of belief, the notion of development of religious narratives. And here, in the relativization of these narratives, here we have a much more problematic, much more challenging factor, especially when we add to it the Hegelian notion of the process in which humanity is going, which tells us, contrary to traditional understanding, that it's not ancient times that were superior, ancient times that were closer to God, ancient times that were authoritative, but to contrary, we proceed, the progress is an ongoing process, and by definition, what we have today, what we believe in today, what we understand today is superior to previous generations. This is a severe challenge to traditional belief, because here you really have contradicting directions. What Rosenzweig claims about historical theology is that what he tried to do is to take this notion and to somehow combine it with traditional understanding of the past. Namely, you interpret the past in terms of contemporary values. You understand the past as gradually revealing contemporary values. What is essential about the past is the partial way into what we believe to be the highest level of religiosity. And now we can reconcile with the past, but with the past that has the face of today, with the past that has a face of our own beliefs and religiosity, the face that is really being anchored in our present day religiosity. And we can throw away all the details that are not interesting, because these are sidewalks, these are things that are irrelevant. And Rosenzweig says, A, it's quite unhonest, but B, it's necessarily unsuccessful because the present is changing. And the moment things, there is a saying that yesterday is a tomorrow that the day before yesterday we were so worried about. And in that sense, the things that we believed in a generation ago, and we were very keen of explaining that the entire move, the entire development of the scripture just necessarily lead to are those things we do not believe in today. And suddenly we have to reinterpret the past in a way that is, I'll use a German word, is lächerlich. So this is unsuccessful, and it's clear that this attempt on the one hand to ignore past, on the other hand somehow to digest past into our religiosity cannot work. With this in mind, Rosenzweig turns, or we can turn to Rosenzweig's constructive basis for his theology. So the first point would be that though the traditional understanding of miracle, and this is an essential argumentation of him, the traditional understanding of miracle was not that much its miraculous, its extraordinary quality. It had to be somehow remarkable, somehow unusual, but it's not that much its extraordinary quality, but the fact that it's a sign that was realized. It is prophecy that really occurred. So miracle, says Rosenzweig, has always two layers, two stages. It's something that was prophesied, that was promised, and that has happened, that occurred. Just to give you two examples that Rosenzweig hint to, the main miracles in Jewish tradition and in Christian tradition. In Jewish tradition, when we talk about the redemption from Egypt and Mount Sinai, it is essentially important to the Torah to tell us in Genesis that it was already prophesied to Abraham, and that not only the slavery but also the redemption from Egypt and the entire story was already known in advance. That's what we have in Genesis. And of course, we all know that in Christian tradition, it's essentially important to show that not only the prophet, but also in the pagan world, there were signs, there were kind of hinting into the becoming of Christ. So it's not just the event, the revelatory event, but it's a revelatory event that was prophesied in advance. In climax, I would say that if we read carefully both the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, we might find other instances that do not necessarily go along with this formula of Rosenzweig, but in many cases you could apply his understanding his exegesis to the scripture. That means that within the notion of miracle, and that is essentially important to Rosenzweig, there's a difference between these two stages. It's the same content, the promise and the realization, but they have a very different ontological quality. The promise is something that has not yet happened, is an anticipation of something, and it transforms itself into realization when prophecy is being realized. The second point, and again is a very simple one, is that a miracle is closely anchored to testimony. Miracle is a historical fact, and historical facts is a double quality historical fact, double layer historical fact, and historical facts are subject to testimony, are subject to the chain of testimonies that bring them to us. Those who witness, maybe who might have witnessed the miracle, and both parts of the miracle might have not needed testimony, but everybody from that moment on needs a testimony, and the belief in miracles, the reliability of the miracles is well anchored in the reliability that we attribute to the chain of testimonies. And Rosenzweig says that the highest testimony from a subjective point of view is a testimony of the martyrs, a testimony of those who are willing to give their life or to die for the testimony that they give. A hint, and I think it's a very interesting hint, when we'll reach the last part of the last book of the last part of The Star of Redemption, he will speak about even a higher layer of testimony, and that is a testimony of those who are willing to live for their belief. The idea of Bewährung is higher than the idea of martyrdom, but for the time being, we are only in this introduction. The third point is that though Rosenzweig is a higher of the new theology he was speaking about, though he says very clearly that also for him presence has the priority, and the only kind of religiosity he can adhere to is religiosity that is based in the present erlebnis of revelation. Presence itself needs to be grounded in the past. Experience needs to be grounded in factuality. The intimate sense of being loved by God needs to have a kind of wider ground in the Word. And without it, revelation itself loses its meaning. Revelation itself is senseless, is somehow hang somewhere in the air. So what we need is, without losing the priority of the presence, without forgetting that it's all about a viewpoint from, or looking from the viewpoint of the presence, we do need the past. And that means for Rosenzweig that though the traditional stories, the traditional narratives, and I'm in point 4, that the elements, the details of the traditional narratives are not necessarily reliable, not necessarily something I can stick to, tradition itself is something that is still relevant and maybe even more than in the past. The tradition itself, what tradition transmits to us through those stories which we have no other alternative but to read in a critical way, tradition itself and the messages of tradition, both Christian and Jewish traditions, are essentially important, and that's why it has to be re-understood. Instead of either or, namely accepting it as is or getting rid of it, and that's exactly what we saw with the miracle, we have to reinterpret it, we have to re-understand it. And this brings us to the essence of what Rosenzweig is doing in this introduction. We saw, and we could hear earlier that philosophy, not philosophy in the old Sikh Hegelian sense, but philosophy in the supposedly healthy, constructive way Rosenzweig was building it, is successful but totally insufficient. Philosophy cannot provide that which philosophy demands. We ended up the first part with figures, and you were asking about status, ontological status or epistemological status of those figures, of God, Word, and Man, that were in a way true, but totally isolated and static, that needed to enter into relationships that philosophy cannot even describe, cannot even climb up to. So philosophy is in a need. At the same time, we could see, and this is why the entire discussion that I tried to describe in the last 10-15 minutes was so important. Theology itself is in a need, because theology itself lacks the possibility of providing the past. Theology, in the sense that Rosenzweig sticks to, adheres to, knows only of presence and future, and has no factuality. It is anchored in the experience of revelation, but needs the ground of creation. Now, the traditional, at least rationalistic way to describe the relationship between philosophy and theology, and here we go back to Hegel, Rosenzweig refers to him in the introduction to the first part, is that theology, religion, anticipates, partly non-conceptually, anticipate that which philosophy will fully reveal in full rationalistic conceptual sense. Now this doesn't work, and what Rosenzweig is trying to offer is an alternative relationship, and that is of a bridging, of understanding philosophy as anticipating that which theology will reveal, of philosophy as a promise, as a prophecy for that which revelation, theology, Glaube will actually confront us with. And in that sense, theology can fulfill the needs that philosophy has and cannot respond to, and philosophy can fulfill the needs that theology has and cannot respond to itself. So the entire idea is to look from revelation, from the experience of revelation, into that we have already established as philosophy in the first part, and to understand that which we have understood in the first part as a promise of revelation. And it does not mean that this promise is being wiped up by revelation. Not in a way. That's why it's an immer währende, ever enduring Vorwelt. But it means that all this that we have grasped in the first part is only the under the surface infrastructure for that which revelation is. From a revelational point of view, it means that revelation is in no way a kind of self-understood event, but a revolution. Revelation is a transformation. Revelation will mean that something essentially changes. And using the German etymology, revelation is eine Offenbarung. Things that were closed are being opened. The German etymology of revelation, for those who don't understand German, it's opening that which was closed. It's not the Latin etymology that is used in English. So this combines the two parts. The first part and the second part need each other. Philosophy and theology cannot be without the other. This provides both philosophy and theology, on the one hand, full authority in their own domain, and nevertheless put them in relationships with each other. It provides this speculative, absolute point of view of philosophy, the philosophy of the Standpunkt, the philosophy of the viewpoint of the individual. It provides it with objective, absolute starting point. It provides revelation with the sense that it is a transformation. And that's why Rosenzweig will be able to speak about humility of the soul as the antithetic result of the stolz, of the proudness of the self. So it's not about a person who submits himself or herself to God by losing his or her own personality. It's about a human being that submits him or herself to God by totally maintaining that which without revelation would be the rebellious self that continues to exist. Just two last remarks, because it was a bit too long. First of all, where do we find all of that? Says Rosenzweig, and it goes back to the question of language that you were talking about. Language, in its multi-layered quality, gives us all this phenomena at the same simultaneously in our life. In the first part, Rosenzweig was talking about the pre-languages, the silent languages of art and math, of logics. What he called math is not math, it's logics. Of logics and art that somehow contextually create a prelingual element. We have language as a real phenomenon. We speak, he writes, we read, we give commentary with words to what he said. And we have this a messianic conception of, he speaks here about a language of humanity, the common language that will spare us the need to speak in so many languages and to try to understand French and Italian and German and English and so on. But he really refers to what he believes in, and that is a supreme silence that is even superior to language itself. And the last remark, which will bring me back to my first comment, is that through this notion of miracle and through this very clear, very careful use of this notion of miracle, Rosenzweig can build, first of all, the books of the second part in a very clear way, and each event of creation, revelation, redemption, and each partners of this event, God and Word in creation, God and man, woman in revelation, man, woman, and Word in redemption, transform themselves through revelation. This is really an Offenbarung. And of course, this will give us a basis for the third part. At the end of the day, it's not the star of revelation, it's the star of redemption. And though redemption is also being dealt with in the third book of the second part, it's the essence of the third part. If you want to understand many of the difficulties the star faces its readers with, it has to do with this dual starting point that I was talking about. And Miracle explains it or depicts it in the fullest sense. You cannot start but by the fear of death, the very beginnings of thought, the foundations of the kind of speculative, airy figures of God, man, and Word that were there in the first part. You cannot start but through revelation, through the presence, viewpoint of the presence of the experience of revelation. When you write a book, you have to choose. Buber chooses in I Am Thou to say that experience, Beziehung, is the beginning, and he simply chooses the presence. Rosenzweig insists on choosing both, and has no other way but choosing both. And that's why we have to go all through the first part and somehow try to understand something of it, and get the methodological aid of the Miracle in the introduction to the second part, in order to understand that we have understood in the first part much more than we even thought. That the second part shades light on the first part and makes it much more understandable and much more secure than we could ever imagine before reading it. Thank you.